I spoke too soon.
PR Connections Radio presents this episode of the PR Connections podcast is brought to you by Classy Communications PR and Advertising. Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success.
All right, welcome to JP's Teachers Lounge, episode 7, Teaching and the Educators Market. I know last time, thank you for joining me again, Mr. Francis. I appreciate that. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. It's always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure's mine. I appreciate it, and it's added a very needed element. And last time we were talking, I was planning on doing something else, but as we were talking, you give me some ideas. So I wanted to tonight I wanted to focus on my opinions and my kind of my observations about the education as a market, as a market, similarly to computers, buying computers as a market, and how teachers can be more entrepreneurial and less bureaucratic. We're not going to. You can't take away the bureaucracy, but find a way to navigate through it. And again, from our talk last time, you kind of inspired me with some ideas and everything. As a teacher, being in the public school, I was in public school for 22 years in 2 different school districts. Now I'm in a private school, and just the whole idea that right now this school can fire me, or at least recommend the school board to quit, have me quit, or have me fired or removed, or not renew my contract for whatever reason. Not that they would do it unless they had good reason. It gives me a different perspective about teaching, and again, being more entrepreneurial and looking at teaching as how could I help the students? What are some things that they need? The interests, and then thinking about students are always going to know what's in it for me, just like a customer, just like anybody in any relationship. You got to find out what and you've talked about this before. I do copywriting on the side, and a big motto of copywriting or any kind of sales writing is people love the idea. People want to buy, but they don't want to be sold. And it started me to thinking about, for example, the big difference. For about 8 years, or actually 10 years, I was teaching in a court continuation school, and I was also teaching in the city jail through the Department of Adult Ed, and with various exceptions. The students in the daytime school, they didn't appreciate things. They didn't care. Everything was given to them. But when I worked with the inmates, for whatever reason, obviously humility, life experiences, gaining some perspective, to them, they knew the value of education. And even for practical purposes, a lot of times they would be in jail, and they had a union job, but they needed a GE or a GED, And in order to keep that union job, now there was purpose for them. So I guess like what I want to talk about is, do you feel that in just in your experience, schools, again, no matter how much money you throw into things, don't you believe at least I think, at least one of the most important things is for students and parents and everyone to buy in to education?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Well, it's an investment, and it's not just a fiscal investment. It's an emotional investment. It's a psychological investment. Um, they need to basically have that investment in education. The problem is that with education, it's hard to look at education like a business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to run education like a business. And it's hard to even evaluate education like a business, because the product that you're churning out are students, are learners, that you're going through the process. You're going down, quote, the assembly line of K-12, and the product you're churning out is a student, is somebody who hopefully is going to be a contributor in society, someone who's going to uh, be in what they would call a citizen, a productive citizen in society. The problem is that there's so much going on when it comes to education. If you think about it, you're not just dealing with fiscal or economics. You're dealing with psychology. You're dealing with how people learn. You're dealing with how people, what motivates them. And the sad fact is that the education system, in a lot of ways, has failed people. That how many people can you know? I mean, not even currently, but through history, is that they weren't good at school, but they learned later in life how to be successful. And I think that's probably one of the biggest problems when it comes to education, is that we're hammering these square pegs into round holes with the hopes that we're going to mold them into something. And while that stands true, I think with this day and age, especially, it's more so not even just molding, it's helping them discover why they can be, how they can be, who they can be. What are we doing to encourage students to recognize and realize their potential? And not only just have them recognize and realize what their potential is, but also how to work for it. That things don't come easy. That there is no such thing as an overnight sensation. The overnight sensation, there never has been an overnight sensation. There never has. It's been, it takes a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and teaching the kids how to discover their potential, but also how to work to their potential. That's what schools should really be for. And that's what the investment should be. The hard part is when we look at schools like a business. It's not a business. It's government. It is public sector. The bureaucracy is in schools because that's what government is, bureaucracy. So what can we do to make sure that we provide a service that allows kids to rise to reach and go beyond their potential?
Yeah. I mean, yes, you mentioned that education is not it should not be run like a business. I agree. You look at the services that should not be run like a business: education, the law, and probably health, right? To a certain degree. The whole big thing about, like Senator Bernie Sanders, healthcare is a right. Well, if you think about it, we're all born. No one asked to be born, but we're all born. We all, at least most people, I hope, value, appreciate their lives, and we also want to sustain our lives as much as possible. And yet, if you have like a life-threatening illness or disease or surgery or something, and oh well, you can't, you don't have enough money to pay for it, so you're denied. So I get both sides. I mean, I get both sides of the argument. Like, that doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem fair. Why would you not want to help people? But also understand why people wouldn't work for free. If you don't expect to work for free, you're not then you become a servant, or at least a slave,
Right.
where you don't. So I get that. So you want the incentive, like the innovation and incentive, like a business, but you don't want it. Obviously, you don't want it to run like a business, because, again, like you said, the product is the student, and it's more comprehensive, it's more holistic. It's not, and then again, it's not an overnight, it's not an overnight solution. So years later, you have students come to you or reach out to you and say, hey, excuse me, you made a difference, and I appreciate it. And it's not like a business where, at the end of the month, you look at the profit, you look at the reports and the profit margin. Either you succeeded or you didn't. So I can understand that. But again, for a market, the way the free market is successful, at least when it's run like a free market, is because eventually the bad companies fail, but the good companies survive. And if you have a bad company, you find ways to you have to improve, or you have to solve something. You have to improve, or you don't succeed. I don't like the idea that again, school is government, it's public, where there's no accountability. To me, that just rewards good, bad behavior, forking, money. But at the same, they need some accountability. But at the same time, I do understand. I do understand what you're talking about. And I think one of the problems, I think, is, again, when you last time we were talking about testing. Yeah, testing. Yeah, the test scores are important, but it's not the whole thing. It's not the whole picture.
Right.
I'll give you an analogy. You watch a basketball game, and it's tied. It's the scores, the leads go back and forth, right? Back 59 to 60, 61 to 60, 61 to 60, 60, all these. And then notice with basketball games, at the end of, like, let's say, last couple minutes, the losing team is forced to force foul and get and then if they're in the penalty, getting the penalty, free throws. Hopefully, if they miss the free throws, and then the final score might be 80 to 68, and you think, well, that doesn't sound like a close game. Well, it doesn't tell the whole picture.
Right.
And I'm kind of saying, like with test scores, it doesn't say the whole, doesn't show the whole picture. And last time you were talking about, when schools improve, all of a sudden, they get these high marks, they get these A's. We need to differentiate between improvement, but don't lower the standards either, right? Mm-hmm. It's okay for them to improve. It's good for them to improve, but don't lower the standards. Let them get there. Help them get there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because you were talking about, like, some schools do they still have the A+ letter grades, or what do they do now for schools that are successful? They get the funding, they get all that.
Well, everyone gets funding. I mean, that's the thing.
I'm talking about designations. I'm talking about, like, they get improvements, so then they're listed as a good school, and then realtors can use that as, oh, selling houses were in a good school district, and then it raises the property value, all that.
It's really interesting. I was just talking to someone who's running for superintendent out here in Arizona. He was talking to a real estate agent about that. And that's a very, very big issue. But it's people don't look into, they see the letter grade of A, B, C, D, F, and they don't know why. And, with a D or F school, you pretty much know why. But even with A school or B school, well, what does that mean? Letter grades for schools have become advertising, has become marketing. It's kind of like even like grades in school equate to money, because if I get more A's, I qualify for more scholarships, you see, or if I take more AP courses, then I can go and get A's. Then I can only get more scholarships. I can get college credits, so I don't have to spend as much time and as much money in college. I'm going to college with credits underneath me. The whole thing, and it's really interesting. I was just reading a book. It's called Beyond Standards by Morgan Polikoff, who he's down actually by your old stomping grounds at USC, where he talks about, and it was another book, came out in the 70s, about the system of school and how schools were set up. And schools, as we know, follow the factory dynamic, that we send kids down the assembly line of K through 12, we pass them on. But what's also interesting, he talks about this thing where it's called the egg carton structure, that even though it's not like a bag of chips. Like, you get a bag of chips or you get a bag of apples, and they're all in the bag together. If you think about it with an egg carton, you have the carton, but each egg has its own little place that you put it. Yeah. And that's the way schools are set up, is that our classrooms are each these little compartments. We shut the door. We do what we want to do. And it's really funny because it even brings us up to say, you can't even ask the teachers, are you teaching the standards? Because the presumption needs to be yes, because it's policy. It's, that you should be teaching the standards. So, of course, you're going to say, yeah, I'm teaching the standards, because you're following policy. The problem is that when you look at you look at what they call school competition. It should not be competition. And when they talk about school choice, every local education agency, be it district or charter, has school choice. The question needs to become about opportunities to learn. That's the focus. And when you look at it and you look at the quote market, if it's not working for your child at that location for a number of reasons, and it might not even be academic. I was just talking about this, that I had a year of high school where socially things weren't going well for me. So my parents had to pull me out. And academically, I was fine. And, I could have gone there, my local school, academically, but socially there were issues. There was a lot of peer pressure going on with things. My friends were making destructive decisions. I wasn't. And I was having, serious issues emotionally with that. My only options was to go to a private military academy for kids who were discipline issues, a Christian Brothers Academy, a military academy where a lot of kids from upper social middle class went to, or a parochial school. But my parents also had to pay tuition for that. There was no charter schools. There were no charter schools out there. And when you look at education as a market, the market should not be from a business. The market should be from opportunity. It's kind of like, if you think about it, you can go to any kind of medical facility. You don't have to go to your local urgent care or your local hospital. You can go wherever it is. And the thing is this, it's government. And yes, there are opportunities for people to take advantage of what we call free services. If you get arrested, if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you by the court. And you go to medical clinics that are, local communities that are not private hospitals. And if you don't like that quality of service that's offered by the government, you can go and basically get higher quality services. But I'm sorry, you're going to have to pay for that. If the public defender is not as good as the high-priced lawyer, and you want the high-priced lawyer, well, the government should not have to pay for you to have the high-priced lawyer. If the medical services are not the quality you need, then you may need to go to a higher quality, medical service, but the government should not pay for that. Going back to education, we have a lot of these things with empowerment scholarships, and depending upon, and it should not be based upon the fact that I don't like my child's school. I don't like what's going on in my child's school. Well, if you don't like what's going on in your child's school, there are other schools you can go to. You can go to district schools. You can go to charter schools. If you want to go to a private school, unless there's a need, and that's where you get into the question about people with disabilities, because maybe the services in the public sector are not what the child is not in the best interest of the child, or will not service the child. So you do need private school. And that's where the government steps in and helps out with that. If the services cannot be provided by the public sector, that's where you should look and see, well, that's where the government should step in. Because if those services are not provided, or you cannot afford the services, that's where you get those empowerment scholarships. Right now, what's happening with it, especially with Arizona, is that it's open to anybody. And what's interesting is that there's little restrictions on it. There's little guidance for it. We're in Arizona doing a thing called risk-based auditing, which means they said if it's $2,000 or under, you're just going to get blanketly approved, and we'll go check and see what you bought after you bought it. We'll go look and do a risk and do an audit after you bought it. Well, great. I already bought my television. I already bought my diamond ring. I already bought my lingerie. I'm saying this to you not to be extreme, but I'm saying these are the kind of things that are happening with it. And unless there's a need, and it's different when it comes to education, because you're talking about a population that needs support. You're talking about children. These are not adults who made a choice to commit a crime. These are also not adults who, as they grow older, they have medical issues and they need treatment. These are children, our most precious commodity. And these kids, if they can't get the services they need in the public sector, then yes, the government should come in and help out. That's what they call government services. But that doesn't mean you should just open it up and give it to anybody just because I want to go to private school or I want my kid to be homeschooled. Is there a need?
And that's where, they talk about a lot of people have a trouble time differentiating between equality and fairness. Mm-hmm. It's what is fair. What is, like when I work, I used to work concerts, and someone wants to come to a concert, they want to be there, but they're ADA, there's an ADA section where most of the time it's a good they have a good view.
Right.
But that's something that it's needed. They have, they provide that services. And it's funny, you were talking, not funny, but
ironic.
You're talking about the school. If a school's not right for them, like with you, and it may not have anything to do with academics, it's it's more, you find a place, a school that is a better fit for you. it's customized better for you, and that's a great thing, and that goes back to when I was talking about not just teachers but schools being more entrepreneurial, in the sense that we want to find what the students need, their mental needs, their social needs, spiritual, obviously physical needs and spiritual needs. And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, innovation. And I understand that education, being a government services, should not be run like a business, but we should have some incentives, and I'm all for that. You were talking about services like like a trial, or a public defender. You have if that stuff I have no problem with, because we do have that system where if you get arrested, okay, if you can't afford an attorney, public defender. And but the public defender has 1,000 other cases. They're not going to be able to spend as much time with you, but at least that's
that's bureaucracy. That's the government,
right.
But
at least it's there. It's being offered to you, and I have no problem with that. The problem I have with at least in terms of the criminal courts, the criminal law, you have people who are in jail right now who technically are innocent. Well, let's say not innocent, but they're not guilty, but they'd rather serve the time instead of going to trial and risk getting convicted. You know what I mean? And then forced to risk, spend years there, but because of money, they don't have the money. So they stay in and do the, what do you call it?
They cop a deal.
They make a deal.
Yeah.
It's like training day. It's not what you know, it's
who you know.
No, training day. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Oh, that's right.
Remember
right.
He always said that? But it's true, because it's so it's like, it's very unethical, but that's the way it is. I'm against that stuff.
Because law's not about, law's not about, okay, I'm here to prove you're innocent. Law's about basically, can I win? Can I win the case? That's the unfortunate thing.
Right.
It's very, it's funny, because here's the thing, you're looking at it. Law, if you look at it from a service standpoint, everybody deserves to be, make sure that they are protected, not only in terms of by prosecution, but also by defense. That if you have been a victim of the crime, you need to prosecute the person who victimized you. If you are accused of victimizing somebody, you should have somebody who can defend you that you're innocent until proven guilty, right? And especially if you are innocent and it's a false accusation. And you think about it, this is that, what do you do when the person that they're guilty and you still have to defend them? That's the thing. And that's the thing, even with some lawyers, is like, okay, the lawyers will probably even say, did you do it? And the person will probably say yes. And basically, client privilege, they will not reveal what their client has said to them. And then they say, okay, now we got to build your case to prove that you didn't do it. So I'm not going to bring up a famous case about that, but you probably can think about who I'm thinking about. So you look at it in terms, the thing about school, and you think about the education market. Now, there's a lot of different things we talk about education market. Are we talking about the school and how the school can market itself? Because it's interesting that if the school is going to be some sort of entity that needs to market itself to get people to come there, now it's a business. Because you shouldn't have to say, come to my school in a local community, because it's a community center. That's what it is. I mean, and the schools want to be the community center. We not only want to teach the kids, we want to feed the kids, we want to, make sure the kids are, not only learning academically, but learning, morally, and it's a service center that it should be serving the community. When all of a sudden now you're saying, hey, come to my school because my enrollment's dropping and my funding is tied to my enrollment, now you're a business. And that's the thing. Kids are to school money. Every child has a price tag attached to them at a school. Now, a reason why a lot of these parents get upset is that, why am I paying out of my taxes for this school that's not servicing my child? That's why they say the money should follow the child. They call that backpack funding. Do I disagree with that? I don't disagree with that if it's not servicing the school. But the thing is that you have other opportunities. It's not basically like, I want what I want. Well, what the Rolling Stones sing, you can't always get what you want. And there needs to be guidance. Yeah, but you can try. Sometimes you get what you need. But the thing is that there has to be guidance. People are just not going to give you money because it's your unalienable right to have an education. It is your unalienable right to have an education. Everyone has the right to an education. Everybody has a right to a free and equitable education. Our standards-based school system is founded on the idea of equity. That's why Horace Mann created the common schools back in the 1800s, in the 19th century. That the standards were for the purpose of equity. Equity was based upon that all men, regardless of their location or their social and economic status, has the right to a free education. That's why we have government schools. And then when we standardize
equal level playing field, I get
right.
that.
Well, even equal means everyone gets it. Equitable means everybody can access it in a way that is a way that they can access it. That's the difference. Like everybody gets a bike. That's a bad analogy. Oh, that's the one that really ticks me off about the bike. It's hard to really capture what it is.
What about my example with the ADA person at the concert? Not like if someone who's able-bodied is not going to sit there. Is not allowed to sit there because that person can move around a lot easier. Whereas someone who wants to go to a concert, it's designed for them because that's what that person needs.
Well, is the policy in effect to say that if you're able-bodied, you cannot have those seats? Is there something when they buy the ticket? I know that for a fact that when you go buy handicapped seats, and my father, who was disabled, we had this issue all the time where people would buy seats that were set aside for people who were disabled. And because they were usually good seats, that able-bodied people there's nothing to screen that out. See, James, that's the thing I even say about the whole thing about why people get, ticked off about charter schools. That charter schools, the policies and laws that allow charter schools allows a lot of flexibility because charter schools were supposed to alleviate the bureaucracy that district schools have. That charter schools were supposed to be where schools feel they could be more innovative, that they could do things that were hampered by district policy. So that's why with charter schools. So teachers, you talk about market, you talk about entrepreneurialism, that teachers feel like, hey, this is not working in the institution where I'm working. I have an idea. I'm going to open up my own charter school. And charter schools, the way that they're governed and the way that they are opened differ. I know in California that the charter is chartered by the local district. Here in Arizona, and also where you are in Nevada, you have a charter board. So you get authorized to have a charter school, but you also have to go up to that charter board and say, I want to expand my enrollment, or I want to open up another facility. Well, they're going to look at it and to say, okay, how's your school performing? And if your school is not performing as an A or a B, you may not get it, because they look at it to say, we are funding this school, we are giving you this money. And someone made a great analogy of this for me, is that the analogy was, think about this. You are contracted to pave roads, and there's not a government company that's a road paving. You contract with a company to pave the roads. Well, you do a crappy job paving the roads. Why am I still going to throw money at you? More money at you. Why am I going to give you more? That's the whole concept. But there's a lot more restrictions on charters than people realize. The restrictions that aren't there is about who gets the charter and how they use the money. So that's why you see a lot of companies come in and they're called charter management organizations, or you see a lot of these real estate companies who build the building and then sell the building or lease the building to someone who wants to open up a charter school. The big thing is with charters, it's a real estate investment. Because here's the thing, if my charter closes, that building doesn't go back to the government. I own that building. All the equipment in that charter does not go back to the government or to the state education agency. That's my equipment. I can go sell that off. I can do a fire sale. The thing that's really questionable is these ESA scholarships. That should be based upon, my 2 cents, my opinion, not on a want, but a need. That does this child need the services that the public sector cannot provide them? And it needs to be on a case-by-case basis. And there needs to be a process to it. And don't tell me we don't have enough people in our office to go and check all the applications and such. That's a bunch of bunk. There's ways you can look for it. I mean, if you look at things, you look at what they're asking for, it's simple to say, okay, what are you asking for? I want a big screen TV. Why are you doing this? Because my kids need to have a big screen TV that will help them and they can do things on it and see things. Okay, you know what? I'm not really sure about that. I'm going to mark that as a potential rejection. Yours has been rejected. You can appeal it. Now you go and appeal it. And you appeal it and you review it and you plead your case, and maybe that, you can get it approved or not. That's the process. That's the process. The other thing is, and I'm still trying to figure this out, because I hear about this thing about we want to privatize education. We want to make sure, get rid of the public school system and privatize education. Well, how's that work for the prisons? We're privatizing prisons. Has that really approved anything? Has that really
because that's the incentive. It's a bad incentive. It's a bad incentive because that means more prisoners, more money, making more money. So then you have lack of trust in certain police and certain communities. Right. That's a bad idea. The only benefit would be it would take the burden off of the government in terms of budgeting. But is that really a is that really a problem?
Well, that's the problem. Why do we need private prisons? Why do we even need prisons at all? Because people should not be going to prison.
Right. Well, there was a study done. I think they base 3rd or 4th grade reading scores. And that determines how many prisons they need to build. They look at I heard something like that.
Wow.
3rd or 4th grade, or maybe it's 4th and 5th or somewhere around there. I learned that from Time to Teach when I went to the Time to Teach training. I don't know where the study came from, but that I do remember. Again, they base it on reading skills to determine how many prisons they need to buy, or they need to build. But I agree with you. That's bad. That's a bad because that's a bad incentive. It just like uh, guaranteeing student loans, so many student loans for for uh, for every student, and the government goes to universities and says, approve these student loans because don't worry, even if they don't pay it back, we'll guarantee it. Well, heck, if you own the university or you're on the university board, wouldn't you raise your tuition? If you know it's being guaranteed.
That's the same thing happening with hospitals. I mean, when people go to the emergency room, they skip the bill. You know,
Yeah.
they don't pay for the services. And that's why the premium. Look, the big thing is that when it comes to the education market, I believe in school choice, but I believe in opportunities to learn. That's the thing.
and
And school choice is often wrongly characterized as district versus charter. No, everyone does school choice. When you do attendance variable variances, that's school choice. When you have magnet school, you have school choice. You know, the fact that I can go and transfer my kid from one school to another school within the district or even outside the district, that's school choice. And it's funny because the schools have even, I remember when it was really tough to get an attendance variance, and you had a lot of stipulations. Like if you got in trouble, I remember this. I remember I had a student who got in trouble, and because they were in our school, but not in our neighborhood or even in our district on the attendance variance, they were kicked out. You know, that's back in it. Now they're like, no, we need that money. And that's the thing. Plus, James, think of it this way. What is the incentive for a school to succeed? What's the incentive for a teacher to have their kids? Now, morally, absolutely. But what is the incentive? What do you get? You know, I was talking the other day, what I used to say to my students is that about 3 or 4 weeks into the year, 3 or 4 weeks into the year, beginning of the year, I would say to them, okay, I've done a preliminary assessment. I know how you can do on the state assessment. And I'd go around and say, meet, exceed if you want to, meet, exceed if you want to, exceed if you want to, meet, exceed if you want to. When I got through all the kids, they would always say, why'd you say all of us are going to meet? And I said, because I'm going to do my job. And my job is to teach you and to make sure you demonstrate proficiency and perform successfully at this grade level in this subject by achieving the standard. Why'd you say exceed if we want to? And I said, because you don't have to. That's up to you. Exceeding is a choice. Look, don't do it for me. I am not going to get a bonus. I am, the best thing I'm going to get is a pin, and I don't like poking holes in my shirts, and a candy bar. Congratulations. And it's funny, like, guys, kids, we're an A school. And I have this thing. I go, a tale of two children. They get this sheet at home that says how they did on the assessment. And let's say both of them are proficient. Let's say both of them are just proficient. Okay. One kid goes to the school, and it's a month later after, the scores, they've been released and they've gone through arbitration, and they've looked at the cut scores, and they say, okay, we got too many of these schools. We need to lower the cut score. Now my school is an A school, and they all gather the kids in the cafeteria, and all the administrators there and all the teachers are there, and they're all gathered, and there's that person. I think they're called the superintendent, which means that they're in charge of the school district, and he's there, and the principal gets up and goes, ladies and gentlemen, I have Dr. So-and-so from the district office. And the district goes, I am proud to announce that your school got an A. Yeah. And because your school got an A and you got an A, so you should turn around and thank your teachers. Thank you, Mr. Pasudich. Thank you, Mr. Francis. And you know what? You all get ice cream. Hey, we all have ice cream. We got an A. We don't know why we got an A, but we got an A. Now that kid who's also proficient goes to their school. Their school's not an A school. So that kid goes to that school. Now, that kid's proficient. According to the assessment, they're fine. The superintendent, same district, goes to that school with the administrators. Now, they're not meeting with all the kids, with all the teachers and administrators. They're having closed door meetings because you're not an A school. And that kid now is punished, quote, because they have to have all reading and all math, and will incorporate science and social studies into the reading to make sure that they're learning how to read and their literacy, because we got to get our scores up. And that teacher has always someone walking through their room, either as they call them an instructional coach or an administrator, always observing. And there's no ice cream for that kid, even though he's proficient. His school's not. There's no ice cream celebration. So why can't he have ice cream? Because he did his good thing. Now let's look at the other school. Now the other school is an A, but not everyone's proficient. A large percentage of them may be proficient, or there's kids who have demonstrated growth, a large percentage of demonstrated growth to get that A. That kid at that school is proficient according to their assessment. Not sure why, but he's proficient, or she's proficient. But those kids aren't proficient. Why are they getting ice cream? You know, it's kind of like, why is the player on the sports team who never played a minute in the Super Bowl or even that season getting a ring?
Gets a ring, yeah. No, you're right. You're right. There's a lot of things that would be considered unfair. But the subtopic of today's podcast was, how teachers can be more entrepreneurial and less bureaucratic. I know that you're going to have bureaucracy, but to me, as a teacher, I changed my perspective, be more entrepreneurial, in terms of I wanted to find out what all my students need, and not only that, but their interests, their hopes, their skills, what things that they need. Do they need to move around more? Move around activities because for whatever reason that's what I wanted to focus. That was my focus today, and less bureaucratic. Even though I know it's part of it, but to be less bureaucratic. So you're gonna have, you're gonna have disappointment. You're gonna have, and the school. Let's think about when you're in school, even on a team, a sports team. When I coached basketball years ago, I was co-coaching with someone, and I made a statement to the team, and then I'll tell you what it is. Then after he questioned me, he's like, "You really believe that?" I told my team, I said, I said, yes, I want to win, but winning isn't the most important thing, because a team could play well and still lose. A team could play horribly and still win. And that's what I told the coach, and I wasn't sure if he agreed with it or not. And that's okay not to agree, but to me it's more about, you're going to come up short sometimes. Okay, so you transfer a school right when they're getting ice cream, or rather getting recognition, and you go to a new school, and then all of a sudden now you have to do reading and math because that school, you're under that school. Well, aren't we judged by? Now I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but aren't we judged by our organization, our institution? If you worked for Amazon and someone had a bad experience with Amazon, they might blame it on you. So that's part of life.
But when you talk about entrepreneur, and now I'm kind of understanding where you're coming from. Entrepreneurialism is a lot about autonomy and trust. And really, a teacher can be entrepreneurial within the bureaucracy if the leadership allows it.
Mm-hmm.
Think about our old principal in Blythe. He gave us a lot of autonomy. He allowed us to be entrepreneurial with the kids. Now, you and I also were teaching at a time where standards-based learning was just an outcomes-based learning, and the whole focus of standards-based education reform was just emerging. You know, in the mid-90s, we came in, we had to teach this stuff. We had our curricular resources. We we had an idea of what we wanted to do until we had a standard. Entrepreneurial within the bureaucracy depends upon the type of leadership you have. And that doesn't mean leadership that is micromanaging versus leadership that is just let everyone do whatever they want. That's why there's that autonomy and there's that trust.
Mm-hmm.
I had a student, he was becoming a principal, and I said, "Why do you want to be a principal?" He said, "Because I want my own school and I'm going to set the tone. And if people don't do what I have the tone, I'm just going to get rid of them. And I'm going to show
that's again, that goes back to power grab, taking, being more authoritarian instead of authoritative.
Right. And the thing is this, is that
we got to start wrapping.
But the thing I'll leave about it is this. So we'll say this. To be entrepreneurial in a bureaucracy depends upon whether the leadership gives you that autonomy and has that trust in you to do what it takes. Because I'll tell you, superintendents, they don't want it knocking on their door. I remember I had a superintendent said, "Look, just make sure it doesn't come knocking on my door. Keep it at the site level." And when I was entrepreneurial as a school leader, I actually had it held against me. Now, I am entrepreneurial as an education author and consultant. I have a lot of autonomy and I have to build the trust. But you know what that autonomy allows me to do, James? And this is, some people say, well, it's bad business. You got to do what the client wants. No, I got to do what the client needs. And sometimes the client doesn't even know what they need. Well, Eric, don't like I say, don't piss off the client. Well, yeah, the client's going to be pissed because I have to do something that they need and they may not want it. And that's why even in my business, and sometimes it's a bad thing, like I lose more clients than I get them. And if people say, oh, you don't want to work with Eric because of this, that, and the other thing, it's like, okay, well, fine. If you want to do that based upon, quote, reputation and gossip, then I don't want to work with you in the first place.
Right. Exactly. You'll get the clients that you need,
the only way you can really be entrepreneurial as a teacher within the bureau, the only way you can be entrepreneurial is that if you have a leader who allows you that autonomy and has that trust in you.
Right. And that's why the title, at least why I try to make the title more entrepreneurial and less bureaucratic, meaning like moving more towards that way, but not obvious. It's a process to keep moving. Eric, we once again filled an hour, and that we still haven't even scratched the surface. We'll definitely continue this, and I'm open to certain topics that we can focus on. But I wanted to move the conversation back into education. And I appreciate your input last time, just like I'm going to appreciate your input, your constructive feedback this time. And I want to appreciate everybody who is tuning in. JP's podcasts, lesson 7. Because this is Thanksgiving, I wanted to leave off with a blessing my dad made years ago at the Thanksgiving table. He said, "Dear Lord, bless everyone at this table as well as at your table." And so I want to wish everyone happy Thanksgiving. And again, I appreciate you, Mr. Francis. Any parting words before we finish?
I think the thing is that when it comes to being entrepreneurial, like you said, we may want to even talk about how can educators become entrepreneurial outside the system.
Okay.
Because the thing is, you got a lot of teachers. People say we have a teacher shortage crisis. We don't have a teacher shortage crisis. We have a lot of teachers out there. We have a teacher retention crisis. And there's a lot of great educators who are leaving education. And there's actually this whole new world that's opening up of, quote, education consulting. But you got to have the right reasons why you want to do how you do what you do. And that might be an interesting conversation, James, because
definitely
that there's opportunities for that, but you got to have a strong reasoning. You don't do it for the reason and you don't do it for the result. You do it for the reasoning. And I think that'd be a great conversation. I think a lot of teachers want to tune into that, because right now this has become this education consulting thing. It's kind of like social media marketer. It didn't exist until about 10 years ago, like the way it has.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Did you know your clothing could help balance your body's pH levels? Our cutting-edge fabric technology naturally promotes optimal pH balance, helping you feel energized, refreshed, and at your best every day. Use promo code PRTalk for more info. Tap the link in the description or contact our experts at 702-445-9488 to learn more.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.